I have tested the Segway Ninebot Max G2 across more than 300 miles. I've benchmarked its speed, acceleration, hill performance and real-world range. In this honest, data-driven review, I'll compare this promising high-end commuting scooter to popular alternatives. Tag along as we find out if the Max G2 is truly worth its price. Before we dive into my performance tests, let's get an overview of the scooter. The G2 is the successor to the G30P, which is arguably one of the most praised commuter scooters of all time, known for its reliability and range. Building on the foundation that made the G30P a market winner, the G2 introduces a range of upgrades, including more motor power, triple suspension, turn signals, and other technology the industry has never seen before. However, retailing at around $1,000 US, the G2 is one of the most expensive single-motor commuter scooters out there. Is it really worth the hype and substantial price tag? Let's find out. The G2 sees an upgrade to its motor, which now has 450 watts of power. Using GPS performance logging gear, I clocked a top speed of 22.4 miles per hour, which is a 20% increase from the G30P. In my tests, it's just behind the new KQi3 Max and Fluid Horizon, while the Mosquito delivers a bit more speed. Next, I benchmarked the acceleration. I averaged 15 miles per hour in 4.65 seconds and 20 miles per hour in 8.51 seconds. This is a 20% boost from the predecessor and slightly better than the KQi3 Pro and Fluid Horizon. It loses out to the KQi3 Max and Mosquito to 15 miles per hour, but interestingly it beats them both to 20 miles per hour. Having spent countless hours with the G30P, the Segway G2 is a big step up in performance, which is exactly what I felt the G30P lacked. It overall feels much more responsive and dynamic to ride, which will be particularly beneficial for heavier riders. So how does this 20% performance increase translate to hills? I climbed a 250-foot hill with an average grade of 8% in 11.6 seconds. This is roughly on par with the KQi3 Max and Fluid models and a monstrous improvement over the G30P and Neo Pro. Like the strongest competitors, the G2 started to struggle on hills around 15%. If you live in an area with steep hills or weigh over 200 pounds, the added power on the G2 is an absolute game changer. All of these results are great, but there's one big problem. The G2's motor runs at 36 volts, whereas the KQi3 Max and Fluid models all operate at 48 volts. As the battery level diminishes, the G2 struggles to pull enough energy to deliver full performance. When I got below 50% charge, I saw a notable drop in performance of about 20% across the board. This just isn't the case with the competitors. Performance-wise, after half a charge it feels like a G30P again. It should be noted that Segway is continually pushing firmware updates that see the performance change, sometimes for the better, other times for the worse. Still, the G2 remains much more performant than its predecessor, but not upgrading to 48 volts is a big mistake in my opinion. What's a solid performance worth if you only have it half of the way? The G2 has a 36 volts battery with a capacity of 551 watt-hours, exactly the same as seen on the G30P. However, they advertise a 6.5% increase in range. How's that possible? This boils down to what Segway calls ride-along technology. They've completely rehauled the powertrain for efficiency. It's a bold claim, so I set out to test it. I ran 3 range tests at varying speeds. Number 1 is speed priority, number 2 is regular, which is the most accurate real-world result, and number 3 is range priority. At full speed I got 21.3 miles of range, in test 2 I got almost 30 miles, and in the last test I got 33.4 miles. So how does it stack up against the competition? Well, in my test it doesn't improve on the G30P. Efficiency aside, I think this mainly boils down to it being heavier and the ride-along technology not making as big of a difference as Segway advertises. The difference between the two is biggest in the high-speed test, but that makes sense as I held a notably higher average speed which draws more power. Still, from an industry perspective, it's much better than the Fluid models and KQi3 Pro. With the biggest battery of the bunch, the KQi3 Max comes out on top as the range king. One last remark on the battery performance. Which model offers the most range compared to its weight? The G2 comes in behind the G30P, KQi3 Max and Fluid Mosquito, but it beats the Horizon and KQi3 Pro. All in all, while it doesn't beat the G30P, it still edges close to the very best in-class scooters.
Sorry for interrupting, I just want to say that eRide Hero is viewer supported. When you use our affiliate links to make a purchase, you help us buy new electric scooters to test and review in the future. We have links for all of the scooters featured in this video down in the description. along with some exclusive coupon codes at no extra cost to you. Thanks for your time.
I am completely blown away by the ride quality on the Ninebot Max G2. The adjustable suspension is a game changer, and it's easily the most comfortable single motor electric scooter I have ever tried. I could make this segment 20 minutes long by praising it or cut it short here as there's barely anything to improve. Instead, I'll quickly go over what makes the G2 truly special. First, the beefy 10-inch tubeless tires are a bliss. They're pre-sealed, which means it's much harder to get a puncture or leak, and they hold air longer. This means more riding and less maintenance. And then we have the fully adjustable part hydraulic suspension that feels incredible. Having tested dozens of electric scooters, I can tell you that the difference between the best and worst suspension setups is night and day. Having the ability to adjust them means you can dial in the dampening to match your weight and preference, which is always going to be better than static setups. And then there's braking. The adjustable electronic regen brake is among the smoothest I've tried. Combined with the drum brake, I measured a stopping distance of 11.7 feet. It's much better than the fluid models, but not quite as good as the KQi3s, but they both have dual discs, which is going to require more maintenance down the line than a drum brake. The dimensions have been buffed up as well. Wider handlebars and a spacier deck, it all makes for a more comfortable ride with better stability and handling. The cockpit sees notable upgrades as well. We've now got 360-degree turn signals and an electronic horn. The padded thumb throttle is super responsive, there's no notable input lag, and it doesn't accelerate in jumps. The only disappointment I have is the display. It's virtually the same as on the G30P, it's dim in direct sunlight, and knowing what Segway achieved with the GT and P series, I would have expected more. Ride quality is where the G2 truly sets itself ahead of the competition and earns its price tag. Don't get me wrong, the KQi scooters are super comfy and the G30 is good as well, but the suspension system puts it in a level of its own. The fluid models both have suspension, but they don't feel quite as refined, and with small and hybrid tires they don't come close. Wherever there are strengths, there are compromises too, and for the G2 a lot of that is found in its weight. At 53.5 pounds, it's roughly 26% heavier than the G30P and almost 15% heavier than the KQi3 Max, and that difference is felt when you have to carry it often. If you have to climb stairs every single day, consider if its strengths are worth lifting. Now, despite its weight, the G2 still does a lot right in terms of portability. The folding mechanism is really solid. It's easy to operate without using excessive force, and it has no flex or play, and I really like the safety pin for an extra layer of protection. It quickly latches to the rear fender for easy transportation. I do prefer the button-released folding mechanism on the KQi3s, but it's still a much better design than 95% of the competition. It's safe to say that the Max G2 carries on the heavy-duty legacy the G30P built. It merges an ultra-reliable design with new safety features and a high weight limit of 265 pounds. Apart from riding hundreds of miles, I simulated wear and tear on the folding mechanism and kickstand by operating both 100 and 500 times respectively. As expected, both held up just fine with no degradation in stability. The fenders are really good as well. They are thick and disperse water really well. I wouldn't mind an additional contact point with the frame for the rear fender, but that obviously makes maintenance more of a hassle. Like the other electric scooters in the G series, the G2 has an IPX5 weather resistance rating. The G30P has long been recommended as a top choice for riding in the rain, and my anecdotal evidence backs that. I've used the G2 in light to heavy rain on more than a handful of occasions, and it's held up nicely with no damage. There are no obvious weak points in its design, and combined with the new TCS anti-skid technology that can be enabled via the app, the G2 is extremely stable even on wet surfaces. If I had to choose one scooter for rainy commutes, it would be the G2. In terms of lights and visibility, the G2 scores high as well. The headlight is bright and high mounted with a downward angle, which is the ideal placement. And thanks to the sheer width of the handlebars, the turn signals have 360-degree visibility, and the taillight is equally bright as well. All in all, the build is almost flawless. The structural integrity is great. This is truly a scooter you can count on. The Ninebot Max G2 is arguably the best single-motor commuter scooter I have tested to date. It will take a lot to beat it on comfort, ride quality and safety. At the same time, it's got plenty of range and enough power to deal with challenging terrain. The only downsides are its high price tag, its weight and the 36 volt system that doesn't retain performance well on a low charge. If you're interested in any of the scooters mentioned in this video, you're more than welcome to use our affiliate link in the description. It helps us fund new scooter purchases to review on the channel at no extra cost to you. Thanks for watching.